welcome back to my garden. So all summer long I've been working on part of our front garden, which we call the White and Shade Garden. It's kind of a working title. Eventually it's going to be more of a part shade garden, and we want the flowers to primarily be white for it. And we're mostly working with foliage colors, so kind of all different kinds of greens from like the limey chartreuse to the kind of bluey silver and all of that. And today I'm working on the stumpery end of the garden. So this is the south side. So south is over there. So there's the hedge, and then there's a maple and a few other trees around. So the shade is pretty good on this side. And I have these two giant stumps, and they were actually part of the same root ball from one of the giant cedar trees that had fallen, I don't know, a really long time ago. It was pretty rotten. It was really hard to move, so I ended up cutting it in half just to be able to move it out of the woods. So I did that, and this half has actually been out all summer, which is why it's like a little more silvery. I don't know if you can tell because it rained this morning. This side's still pretty like browny red. And what I wanted to do here was mix mostly native plants. I have a few ornamentals as well, and make it look kind of like a cozy, mossy, ferny habitat. So I planted 4 different kinds of plants today. I did these Heucheras, this is our native variety of Heuchera, so it stays this kind of mid-green. It has tall spikes of little white flowers. I think it's called coral bells as well. And the hummingbirds like them and the bees like them. They're kind of wispy, so they're nice to walk past. This is our little grass stepping stone walkway here. So I planted 3 of those. 1, 2, 3. And then last winter, I had ordered like 20 little Helleborus plugs. So I grew those on in the greenhouse in like gallon-sized pots. And then I planted out a bunch of those. I think it was 9 in total that I did. So they're still pretty small. I don't know if they'll bloom this winter, but hopefully next winter they will. And then those ones last for a while, and they have those like white flowers that come, like for us, is kind of in December time. So at a time where there's like really nothing else around. So that's pretty special. And then those are the only non-native one that I planted in this area. And then I also have these little ferns. So there's 3 of them. These are one of my favorites and one of the ones I was most excited about. Because they're actually a summer dormant epiphyte. So all winter they're out and they look green and beautiful, and then they go away in the summertime when it gets really dry. But you see them around here. They grow kind of in like cracks of bark, and they just like appear in wintertime when everything else is bare. So yeah, they're pretty sweet, and they're pretty good spreaders as well, I think anyway. So my hope is that they'll kind of end up covering like parts of the stumps. And I also want to get a bunch of moss, which I'll have to go collect in the woods. And I want to get it from like a bunch of different spots. We also have some from when we cleaned our roof. So I'll see if any of that moss works over here too. And I'm just going to plug that into a bunch of places, but that will have to be in a future video. This guy I didn't plant today, but this is our native woodland sorrel. And it's a creeper. I think it should start creeping. It's been in the ground for, I think, about 6 months, and it bloomed like little white flowers. And then the last plant that I planted today is in here, and this is a deer fern. I had planted some of these earlier in the year on this side, but they're mostly dead looking. I'm hoping that they'll come back, but I think they ended up getting a little too much light and it was too dry for them. So I thought being in here in the middle of this like wood thing, this holds quite a bit of water. So even now, like to touch it, it's pretty like wet. So I think it'll be like a nice, humid, and never sunny place for that deer fern. And those ones also can get to be a pretty big clump. I think like 2 by 2. So, eventually that might be this whole opening here. So that would be pretty sweet too. And then I planted a few more of the Helleborus kind of along the walkway here. And then those will be blooming around the same time that or they'll be ending kind of around the time that like the trilliums are coming up and the white bleeding hearts and all of those things that we have. And then in addition to the moss, I want to come through here and plant a bunch of bulbs. I was actually thinking of doing bulbs in some of the holes of this bark that we brought up so that you could have like, I don't know, little daffodils or things coming up. And I do have some bulbs on order. So I have like a few woodland tulips, and I have some white daffodils and some white alliums, because there is a point in the year when all of these are bare that there is, I think, enough light for those. Like we had some last year and they bloomed later than most other places in the garden, but they still bloomed pretty well. Well, that's it for part one of the stumpery. I'll bring you along next time I do some updates and stuff. And I think it already looks super cute, so I'm excited to see kind of where we take it and what other things we find in the woods that we want to bring up here. So thanks for coming along, and I'll catch you next time.